Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad of Dama. We have a very special guest with us today, Ms. Susannah Levin.
Hello.
Welcome, Susannah. Now, she's very special because she's an artist, and therefore can't show anything on her art now, but we want to tell her story. She has a very unique story, and on my book, and that's why I wanted to bring her on the Jewish View. But Susannah, just tell us how it began, how you got into art in the first place.
Well, I'm very lucky. I come from an artist family. In my mother's side of the family, everyone's an artist. I grew up surrounded by art and with a great appreciation for art. So when I wanted to study art, it wasn't a big surprise.
All right. So now tell us what kind of profession. That's really now the kicker point here.
Well, so I actually went to art school, which is more serious than a lot of people would think. It's a ton of work. I thought I knew everything there was, probably like everyone starting at art school, but I learned so much. I think most of all, you learn how to not be so attached to your first idea and how to take criticism and keep growing. And so I went for the commercial arts. I mean, I did a lot of fine art, a lot of painting, but my major was graphic design, and I took a lot of illustration as well. So I have worked since I graduated in '95 as a graphic designer.
All right, excellent. And where did you end up as get a job?
Well, that's the story. Yeah, so kind of early on in my career, when I was a young mother, my husband and I moved to Vermont. My husband had a job opportunity there, and I didn't even know where Vermont was. I'm from Ohio. I knew it was one of those little states up in the corner. My patent line was, I'll go work in-house for Ben & Jerry's, because that's the only thing I knew about Vermont. And I ended up working in-house for Ben & Jerry's. I kind of fell into the job by mistake, by accident, and it was a wonderful job. And I started working there when I was still in my 20s.
Covers of the
designing every part of everything. I worked in.
I think it's unique. I mean, I'm sure all our viewers know about Ben & Jerry's, but it's just like you have one wrapper of a Hershey's bar, for example. It's good enough for, what are they making, 1 million Hershey bars? So you need one design. Mm-hmm. But at Ben & Jerry's, it's not just one little picture, and it's good. They're going to print up 1 million cartons of ice cream.
Yeah, well, I think people think of the cartons first because they are very colorful. Nowadays they're a little less creative, but there are some different ones out there. Back in the day, every carton was different, and we had a whole really interesting long process for making the carton designs. But the cartons are just one small part of it. It's really there are scoop shops, there are ice cream shops. And lots of illustration to be done. They have custom murals, and they need menus, and there are ads, and community events, and T-shirts, and hats, and all kinds of merch.
Really, I didn't know that it was that complicated.
Oh, I designed so many sides of trucks, all kinds of custom things. We would make custom art for different regions of the country and the world. I made murals for all around the world.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even know. I knew the cartons, you see them in the stores, but you didn't. Mm-hmm. That's fairly unique for Ben & Jerry's. Like I say, you have one Coca-Cola truck. It's the same design, for every truck, but here you have to be unique.
It's not, though. There's a
really?
lot. Design has to evolve and grow. If you just have the same design for 40 years for everything stamped on it, it's not very interesting. It's called branding. Every company really has to grow its brand, and it affects everything. I mean, all the internal communications. I made a ton of stuff for the factories, signage for the factory workers to act safely in the factory so they don't get hurt, all kinds of instructional things, but it all had to stay on brand. And every single company, any big company, Coca-Cola, it's not just one design, it's thousands of things. They probably have a big design team and several design firms that they hire.
Really, I didn't know that. See, you never know what's behind the scenes over here. Well, we're finding out, myself and the viewers also. So how long were you there with Ben & Jerry's?
For 21 years. I worked in Vermont for 7 years, and then We moved here to Albany, and I continue to work for them remotely.
Now, you ever meet Ben and Jerry's, because they're two nice Jewish
Yeah,
boys over there,
I
nice
met
guys?
Jerry. I saw Ben a couple of times, but they weren't in the office. By the time I started, they'd already moved on, and they had their own private office somewhere else, and there was a new CEO.
All right, very good. So now the theme of the story is why you quit. Why did you leave Ben and Jerry's? You're saying you had such a good time there, and it was creative.
Yeah, well, it was a great place to work. I really enjoyed my job. But Ben and Jerry's, like a lot of companies, I mean, Ben and Jerry's probably the leader of so many companies in putting their politics first. And
They did that from the beginning? You mean?
they always were like that, yeah, and they were definitely definitely very political. But what they call their social mission, it used to be things that were kind of inarguable, like raising money for hungry children, or building playgrounds in destitute areas, or water justice, or
So some of every piece of the card, they say, well, we're going to give a nickel, or I don't even know how much.
yeah, well,
yeah.
What Ben and Jerry's does when they have a social mission project, they'll have like a project for a season or a year, and they'll put out all kinds of material. They'll have a website, they'll have T-shirts, they'll have handouts, they'll have educational materials, they'll do surveys, they go around to summer music festivals and give out ice cream and spread awareness of their social mission. So there's a lot of, again, and each one of those things has a design component. There are many things that the company will do for their social mission. And it used to be things that, anybody could get behind. Who doesn't want to see new playgrounds built in a poor area,
Yeah, sure.
It just, but over the years, it started to become very aggressively political, in ways that, some things I wasn't comfortable with, but it finally reached a head for me when, 2 summers ago, when there was a Gaza war, not dissimilar to this one, but, to a smaller degree. And there have been a lot of organizations that have been railing on Ben and Jerry's to get out of Israel, to not have a representation in Israel. Their Israeli partner is a terrific guy named Avi Zinger. He owns the factory there. He's not employed by Ben and Jerry's. He had a contract with them, and he makes the ice cream under the Ben and Jerry's name in Israel with Israeli products. It's the same flavors, yeah. So being part of the Ben and Jerry's team, he would get all of the art that my team would make. He would get the flavors that the R&D team would churn out, and he'd be part of the team, part of international Ben and Jerry's. There's Ben and Jerry's all over the world, Israel was just one of those places. But I started to get a little inside information that something was going on, that Ben and Jerry's, the executive team, really this time might be doing something, might be getting out of Israel. Or, what I was afraid of is that they were not just going to get out of Israel, but they were going to make a statement. They were going to make a social mission statement, and that's in fact what they were working on.
Did it with anything else? I mean, this was a new idea, it's one thing, social justice, but another thing of just putting their ideas into someone else's country. I mean, is it the first time they did that, or?
Into somebody else's country. There was a campaign about gay rights in Brazil. I don't know if they ever actually launched it.
And do you know if this is Ben and Jerry themselves? Like you say, you just said executive team.
Yeah.
Is it coming from Ben and Jerry themselves, or they're away from the?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Ben and Jerry are, I don't exactly understand the relationship, so I don't want to be quoted here. The main decision makers are the board members. There's an independent board that sort of runs the social mission of Ben and Jerry's. And on that board are people that are very, very anti-Israel. So this was definitely, something that some of those people have been wanting to do. there were other political actions, like very aggressive political actions, that were not about Israel, that were, domestic issues, definitely, that some may or may not agree with. This one was really the breaking point for me.
It's interesting, just on a general note, that again, you're seeing liberals, and Israel bends over backwards to be a liberal because, I don't know, again, if the viewers don't know, I know you know it, but in any case that they open up to Arabs, they just say the apartheid, which is ridiculous. There's Arabs in the Knesset, in the parliament, and on and on. They have social programs and they allow Arabs. So they're really, in general, they're one of the most liberal countries on the planet. And then the liberal people in America seem to be anti-Israel. So it's like a paradox, so to speak.
They like to fit it in. I believe they like to fit it into the box of oppressor and victim. And there's an image created in the media and throughout social media that Israel is a white colonialist oppressor, and the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza are brown and oppressed, and that's definitely not the full story. And also the apartheid narrative, which is not true at all, and ignoring the fact, of course, that Gaza and the PA rule Gaza and the Palestinian areas. So,
that's what it seems. There's no logic in there. I mean, if you can say social justice, there's too many poor people in America. All right, you could, why you emphasize that? All right, fine, it's an issue. That people don't have what to eat, and we're in such a great. It bothers me too. We're in a great country like America. Why are there people that need help? I mean, just even at Chabad House, we have a kosher pantry, 200 people in the Capital District. I'm not talking about some super poor area in the South. I'm talking about Capital District don't have enough to eat. So, I mean, it bothers me too. All right, fine, there's causes. But that's what I'm saying. This issue is so illogical that to make these statements, and Israel bends over backwards to be nice and to be open. And that's where the liberals, who they're professing, they're not bigoted, we want to have the best for everybody. They're the ones who really dump on Israel more than other kind of people. So it's
well, and the interesting thing in terms of Ben and Jerry's in Israel, I mean, Avi Zinger and his team, I know them, and they're not right wingers, they're pretty liberal people, and Avi has done a social mission within Israel that totally is in line with the Ben and Jerry's social mission for years and years. He's done everything he can to he does charitable giveaways, and he was working for a while to have all the almonds in the ice cream sourced from a Palestinian farmer.
Oh, really?
It didn't work out because that Palestinian farmer, or farm collective, I'm not sure, was being threatened by his own people to not participate, so that had to end. I know that Avi has had numerous social mission projects that are right in line with kind of old Ben and Jerry's. There's nothing that the team in Israel was doing that was against anything that the corporate Ben and Jerry's here stands for. It was the decision, which is what Ben and Jerry's ultimately did. They decided to, their statement was that they were going to stop selling ice cream in the occupied Palestinian territories. That's what they called it, the OPT. But the fact is that they didn't actually have the power to stop Avi Zinger from selling that because he's in charge of distribution, and he said it was actually breaking Israeli laws for him to refuse to sell it in one area and sell it in a different area. So the subtext to their statement that they're no longer going to sell ice cream in the OPT is that they were ending their contract with Avi Zinger, and they weren't ending it because he had broken any kind of contract or deal or understanding of what the company represented. It was simply because he's Israeli. An Israeli man who has a factory that operates within the Green Line. At least half the employees there are Arab. There were people, all sorts of people that work there. I've been there. There's nothing that he's doing there that is different from Ben and Jerry's. It's just that he's an Israeli.
So what happened now? He had to close up? I mean,
No, he's terrific. He sued them, and he won. He countersued, or he sued, and I should have gotten my facts straight before I came today. But the fact of the matter is that, I think he sued. He sued Ben and Jerry's, and then Ben and Jerry's sued, and Ben and Jerry's said no, and then I think Unilever granted Avi Zinger the rights to use all of the Ben and Jerry's trademarks, including the cow and the clouds and the logo and everything, as long as he does it in Hebrew or Arabic, and then Ben and Jerry's countersued their parent company Unilever to try to stop it, but they lost. So currently, what's happened now is that Ben and Jerry's America has totally severed ties with Israel, which I learned through a lawfare project that is actually, it's considered corporate warfare and it's illegal to do that. And so now Avi Zinger is running his own private parallel Ben and Jerry's in Israel.
so he can call himself Ben and Jerry's and use the same logos or the paintings, your own.
Yeah, so I'm actually working for them now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do some work for the Israeli team, and it's a lot of fun. I designed an Arabic logo for Ben and Jerry's, the first, such an apartheid company and an apartheid country. They're going to make the pints in Arabic.
With the words, you have to learn Arabic, or
Just enough to write Ben and Jerry's. It's kind of complicated.
yeah, well, learning a new language. Well, that's good. That's excellent that you can overcome. And again, it's reverse prejudice. I mean, they're just saying the Israelis are prejudiced, and really, like I say, it goes the other way. Really, with Ben and Jerry's, they didn't do anything wrong, and you're prejudiced against them.
Yeah. What was I think the interesting part of the story is what I went through in the process before I quit, because I kind of heard through the grapevine that things were happening. I'm remote, so I don't always get everything that's going on, because I'm not in the office, and no one was in the office at the time because it was COVID, which was actually kind of nice for me as a remote employee, that I could still I could finally have meetings with everyone on screen, but I was a contract worker, I should say. But I first off, I got to listen in on a all company meeting in which the CEO explained that they were going to do something. They didn't know what yet. It might be small, it might be big, but he wanted to get their feedback. And in that meeting, I didn't hear anybody asking any relevant questions. Nobody really knows much about the situation. They're good Vermonters. If somebody says that there's an oppressor, oppressing a victim, they're gonna, click, they're gonna click on it and and tell you how much they hate that. But they don't actually know anything. They didn't ask anything. One person from the R&D team asked the CEO, should we stop sending recipes to Avi this week? And he said, yeah, don't send any more recipes. And I said, and I thought, oh, that's pretty bad. I think he's just cut off Avi Zinger from the company with that. So even though I was remote and a contractor, I was with the company for 21 years. So I decided that I'm enough of an employee to give my feedback, and really being the only somewhat informed Jew on the staff. There are definitely other Jews, but no one who kind of put Judaism and Israel, at the forefront. And so I started going up the ladder there until I spoke to the head of social mission, who was a Jew, actually, who was very difficult to speak to. He already was extremely biased against Israel. And I learned from him, I told him that they really shouldn't turn toward a BDS stance, toward a boycott, divestment, sanction stance. And he said, oh, no, we're not doing BDS at all. We wouldn't do that. He said, we're working with mainstream organizations like Human Rights Watch. And I looked up Human Rights Watch, and I realized, oh my gosh, this organization is incredibly biased against Israel. They're like the UN. And he bragged to me in this conversation that they had the chief informant at Human Rights Watch speak before their board and tell them about the Israel situation. And they had no one speaking on behalf of Israel. It was completely one-sided, completely biased. And I realized it was just me. So I started calling around. I started off calling my sister-in-law, who lives over the Green Line in Neve Daniel, and asked her what it's like there and how she interfaces with Palestinians in the neighboring towns, and what her life is like. And she gave me information, just sort of how normal life is and how they all shop in the same place and they drive on the same roads and everything. But she said, you could get more information by calling this other gentleman. So I called this man who makes movies about it in Gush Etzion, and he started moving me up the ladder. Very soon I was speaking to Eugene what's his name, Kantorovich, and from the Kohelet organization, a major think tank in Israel. I was speaking to Bassam Aid, who is a remarkable man. He's Palestinian who supports Israel and supports Palestinian rights and self-rule, but in a way that works with Israel rather than against Israel. And he's a very brave man. I was speaking to Benjamin Ryberg from the Lawfare Project, which is Brooke Goldstein's project. She's awesome. If you've heard the new phrase, End Jew Hate, she's the one who coined that, and she does lawsuits all over the world on behalf of Jews who are having the law used against them because they're Jewish. In just like a few hours, the whole Jewish world seemed to open up to me, and all these people wanted to help me and inform me. So when I spoke to the CEO, I would have more information, which I spent 3 weeks. It was actually literally the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. It was my 3 weeks preparing for this. I sort of stopped working altogether, and I just worked on getting better versed and getting ready to speak to the CEO. I didn't speak before the board, which is what I really should have done. So I did speak to the CEO, and he listened, but not enough. Literally the day after Tisha B'Av is when they made their statement that they were pulling out, and essentially severing their ties with the Israeli team. So I quit. I quit publicly. I said it on Facebook, and it went viral, and people screenshot it and put it on Instagram and everywhere, and I had, 80,000, 100,000 likes, and I was in newspapers, and it was crazy. It was my little 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, did it hurt the company in Israel? Because you say they're still going.
Yeah.
And are there still, do you think that they lost volume or, profit? Or, just really now they're independent, so they just do their own things. So.
Well, Avi Zinger, he actually had to purchase the rights to continue using his company as it is. So, that was definitely a money loss for him. But he's going. They are in full operation, and they're in full operation now during the war, too. They barely even had to stop at all. And they're right in the zone, too. They're pretty close to Ashkelon. I saw that in Israel. I see that in Israel there's still a bit of a public impression that Ben and Jerry's Israel is part of the international Ben and Jerry's. Some people will say that they want to boycott it. But the truth is, if you want to make some a little action here in America, don't eat Ben and Jerry's. Don't buy Ben and Jerry's in America. You really shouldn't. Buy Haagen-Dazs. That's another Jewish-owned company. And when you're in Israel, buy a lot of Ben and Jerry's, because they're a
That's
wholly Jewish-owned
I'll give
company.
them a credit, that's what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
they can keep going, even though
Yeah.
they were like in a certain way cut off.
Yeah, they're just going down to sort of simple levels and building back up again, and sort of
I
rebuilding the
mean, the
company.
new recipes they're not getting though, are they?
No, they
wouldn't
have to
get-
develop their own. But they've been doing this a long time, so I think they'll
Yeah.
do fine with that.
They can make a new recipe,
Yeah.
you know, a new recipe
They
for
are.
ice cream over there, maybe but part of your talents of art over here, you can make a new,
There's something in the works.
yeah, all
There's something in the
right.
works. You'll
Right,
see it in a
excellent.
few months.
All
God
right,
willing.
very good. All right, so we got the scoop here on the Jewish view over here. So I think that's it's very good. Are there any? I mean, you've said it so much, and I'd like to say that I give you so much credit because a lot of people, you know, they don't like this, they don't like that, and they come to me and they moan. They don't like the company or they don't like the workers, and so I says, well, go on. It's not so easy to go on. Like say after 20 years of working for something, an institution, and you know, and being part of it, and you think, okay, you hold your nose, and you know, so there's Ben and Jerry's in America. You know, you're not doing anything with Israel. You're not bothering Israel. You know, you can keep on going, but you didn't. You stood up for your principles, and that's, you know, unfortunately, you're fairly unique. I mean, because you know, most people just go along and get along and just go along, like you say, whatever the media tells them to do. And even amongst Jews, like you say, that they, you know, to stand up, you know, well, you're a Jew, stand up for Israel. I mean, it's almost, you know, 2 + 2 = 4, and they don't. Well, they saw on TV it wasn't right, and you know, they're going against. So it's not an easy thing. You're making it like, of course, I quit, but you know, but I appreciate that kind of idealism that, you know, you don't just do anything for money. You know, it's just, you know, you have principles in life, and you're not just going to go along and get along, and so in the meantime you got a nice paycheck or whatever, you have a nice job going along. So I give you total credit for doing this, and you know, for them in Israel, that they could just persevere and just saying we're going to make something go. And unfortunately, that's what happens to a lot of people. But you're a good example of just someone who just stands up for the ideals, and you keep on going, and the Almighty should give you success, and also Avi and Israel with whatever they do, and should find good success and show them that you don't, you're standing up for principles and you don't need them for anything. So thank you very much, Susannah Levin. It's a beautiful story why you quit Ben and Jerry's. And we wish you a lot of success in your coming endeavors.
Thank you.